So, I don't know about you, but every now and then I feel compelled to express myself through the voice of a sheep. It's a universal experience, I'm pretty sure, right? No? Huh, well, here I am feeling a bit sheepish then. Hey, you actually laughed at that one, thanks. They get worse. Anyway, I first wrote the sermon way back in the before times, and have since shared it with 2 other churches, actually, and even written a sequel to it from the perspective of the one sheep who was found. This story is from the perspective of one of the remaining 99 sheep who wonders why her shepherd would bother to go so far out of her way to seek out one lost sheep, especially given that the missing sheep in question is that weird sheep, Doug. Just 2 fun sheep facts for you before we jump into today's gospel reading. On average, the life expectancy of a sheep is 10 to 12 years, but allegedly a sheep named Methuselah lived to be 25 years and 11 months old. Also, very fun sheep fact, an infantry regiment of the British Army has kept a ram as a mascot since 1858. Although he sadly passed away in 2015, the 30th iteration of the mascot was officially promoted to the position of Lance Corporal Darby the 30th. Very formally promoted. There was like a sword and knighthood and everything. I believe that the position is currently held by a Private Darby the 32nd. Our second scripture reading this morning comes to us from the Gospel according to John, chapter 10, verses 11 through 18. Hear now the word of the Lord. Jesus said, "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, who is not the shepherd and who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and runs away, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. The hired hand runs away because the hired hand does not care for the sheep. But I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for my sheep. I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason, the Father loves me, because I lay down my life in order to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it up again. I have received this command from my Father." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. The members of our flock come in all shapes and sizes, but we're a good lot. My mother named me Maple, like maple syrup, because she hoped I'd be sweet. And I am a proud great-great-great-great-granddaughter of Lance Corporal Darby the 30th. I know, but it's okay, you don't have to salute. Since my Aunt Mary had her little baby lamb this past spring, Tweedle, there's been 100 of us. But sometimes I think the shepherd counts us as 99 because Tweedle follows Mary so close and is so scared of everything around him that sometimes he tries to hide underneath his mom. It hasn't worked so well since his last growth spurt, though. We sheep don't exactly have the longest of legs, you know. But everywhere that my Aunt Mary goes, Cousin Tweedle is right there beside her. But we're good sheep, and our shepherd always wants to spend time with us. We're funny and we're smart and we throw great parties. And sometimes some of us younger sheep would stay up all night talking. But then that old party pooper Methuselah would march over and say, "Excuse me, but it is past your bedtime." Past your bedtime? And some of us are trying to sleep here. Killjoy. We always have such a wonderful time together, though. We always share the clover and all the best herbs and forbs, and when it's cold, we all huddle up together to get warm. Every now and then, the shepherd will bring in a new sheep to join us, and I happen to think that we are very welcoming. We always go over and introduce ourselves all together and tell them that they can join us if they want to. I don't know why they aren't always excited to do the things that we've always done. So what if we're a little stuck in our ways? We're a family, most of us, and we like things the way that they've always been. I mean, we always manage to have a great time, but if they don't want to, that's their problem. They'll realize they need us someday. And anyway, they keep each other company, so whatever, it's fine. It's a great life being a sheep. You would not believe the fun we had last fall when Rambo had his Baaa mitzvah. Even old Whitebeard joined in the singing and dancing, and despite not being able to communicate with us, I'm pretty sure the shepherd was toasting Rambo, although she missed most of the party when she fell asleep with a pillow over her head. We're a family, we sheep. And if I do say so myself, we are the best family around. I mean, there's a herd of sheep a couple of hills over, and I can't even believe the way they act. They're always covered in mud, and they just ignore their little ones because they're too busy well, anyway, I'm glad I'm not one of them. You can't trust those kinds of sheep. But I guess not everyone can be like us. I don't know why not all of the sheep here realize how lucky they are to be one of us. Anyway, let me tell you the story of Doug, the weird sheep. My older sister Dolly says that I shouldn't call sheep weird. Whatever, Dolly, she is such a nag. It's like she's a clone of our mother, I swear. I make no apologies. Doug's mother was one of the sheep who was brought in from a different flock, and I'm not saying that we didn't include him, but he did spend a lot of time on his own, looking lost in thought. Who did he think he was, a philosopher? For goat's sake, Doug, we're sheep. Calm down. So, one afternoon, the skies started to turn darker, and the shepherd started to gather us together and herd us back to shelter before it rained. And boy, what rain. I'd never seen anything like it. It rained and the winds blew, and in between strikes of lightning, I saw the shepherd trying to count us. She got to 99 and then came over to my Aunt Mary and me, but Tweedle was standing on his own for once. The shepherd bent down to make sure there were no other little lambs trying to hide between an older sheep's legs, but I saw the look on the shepherd's face when she realized that there were, in fact, only 99 sheep, and one of us was missing. The littlest ones, who had never seen a storm at all before, started crying, and we all drew together in a huddle, even the sheep from the other flocks, and everyone started talking all at once. With so much going on, no one saw the shepherd leave. It took some time to account for everyone, but eventually we figured out who was missing, and we all groaned. Of course it was Doug. Goat darn it, Doug! Every time there's a sheep left behind, it's you. Why couldn't he just be like us? And now the shepherd had gone and left all the rest of us all alone in this storm. I mean, sure, we had each other and we'd been brought to shelter, and the shepherd had left both of her dogs with us to keep an eye out for predators, and we had a fire going in the pit that the shepherd had made, but what were we supposed to do? The storm beat on, and as afternoon turned to evening, some of us made the best of the situation and tried to get some sleep. But worry kept me awake. Was it our fault that Doug always kept to himself? No, of course it wasn't. We never told him he couldn't hang out with us. He could have come over if he'd wanted to. When we got new sheep, we always told them that everyone was welcome to eat with us, and Doug should have figured out that we meant him too. We'd never gone out of our way to make space for him in the circle. No, he could have asked us to let him in. I hope he never heard us making fun of him, calling him a bug and a lug and a slug and a shrug, that weird sheep, Doug. But we only talked about him when he wasn't there, so that couldn't have been it. Sure, his mother was kind of an outsider still. She'd only been with our flock for 8 years. But his father was one of ours, so it's not like he was born an outsider, you know? What were we supposed to do? Form a committee to find out how to make a sheep feel welcome every time the shepherd brought in someone new? wear neck tags until they all learned our names? Who has time for that? All for the benefit of 1 or 2 new sheep every summer? Still, something in the back of my mind wouldn't let me fall asleep, even as the rain slowed down and the stars began to shine. I think I was the only one awake to see the shepherd approach on the horizon before the dogs started barking to announce her arrival. In the very, very early morning light, I saw the shepherd carrying Doug over her shoulders. The shepherd looked exhausted. Of course, she'd clearly been up all night searching for Doug in the rain and the dark. Her braid was dripping water still, and now that they were closer, I thought Doug looked like he'd been crying. The shepherd laid him down near the fire so they could both warm up, and the weird sheep let out a cry of pain. His leg was broken. She made soothing noises, or maybe she spoke to him, but if humans can talk, we can't understand them. She took a sturdy stick and tore a strip of muddy fabric off the bottom of her skirt, binding up Doug's leg and scratching behind his ear, and then brought him a handful of grass and forbs and waited until he'd eaten his fill before she slumped, exhausted, against her pack and pulled out some bread and dried fruit for herself. And she had done all of that for the weird sheep. Was he really worth that much? As the weeks went on and Doug's leg was still healing, he couldn't have made his way over to join our circle of conversation even if he'd wanted to. But as I wondered more and more about why the shepherd had risked her life to rescue Doug and bring him back to the fold, I quietly suggested to the others that maybe we should bring the circle to him. It took him some time to open up to us. Maybe he was worried we were only being nice because we felt sorry for him. Maybe we were. But the flock rallied around him, and eventually he realized that we weren't going to leave him. I mean, the shepherd clearly thought that he was a valuable and important sheep after all, so maybe we ought to give him a second chance. He told us about the night of the storm, how he had wandered off and didn't hear the shepherd or her dogs calling us together. He told us, his voice full of awe, about how patiently the shepherd had pulled him out of the mud and carried him back home. Wow, the shepherd was so brave, like a superhero. The littlest lambs especially declared that they wanted to be just like her when they grew up. After all, if a human could be that heroic, how hard could it be for a sheep? And they began to talk about who they could rescue. My sister Dolly declared that she'd go with the shepherd the next time a sheep went missing. Why should a human get all the credit anyway? Old Methuselina grumbled that no one would get lost if they'd all just stay put where they were supposed to be. Rambo said that maybe we could have a small group accountability system so that we could figure out faster if someone had wandered off. Tweedle started practicing dragging sheep across the field by biting down in their fur and pulling as hard as he could. It didn't rain hard again that season, though, so there was no one else to pull out of the mud, and the dogs kept the wolves away. Tweedle especially began to wail that he'd never get to be a hero if there was no one to rescue, and he had gotten so good at forcibly dragging sheep from one place to another, too. That spring, we said goodbye to Methuselina and Whitebeard, who died of old age, and to Strawberry, who didn't survive giving birth to her little lamb, Snuggle. By the time Doug was able to walk comfortably again, we had started making room for him in the circle without even thinking about it. One day in the summer, the shepherd brought 2 new sheep to join our numbers, Lambo Calrissian and Marshmallow. As the shepherd sat down for her midday meal, the new sheep stood awkwardly in the field, shy around so many new faces. But then Tweedle, who had grown by now, jogged over to them to introduce himself and to show them the best spots for grasses. At first, we didn't understand, but then we realized. Tweedle was being a hero by rescuing these 2 lonely, scared sheep and welcoming them into the fold and headbutting us into a bigger circle when we forgot to make room for them, and forcibly dragging us back together when we started ignoring the new sheep altogether. Wait, no, not the new sheep, Lambo Calrissian and Marshmallow. They have names, and they are part of our flock now, no more and no less than any other sheep. After all, if even that weird sheep, Doug was precious in the eyes of the shepherd, maybe all of us were, maybe even these new sheep too. Maybe it was time to look at every sheep as being precious and treat every sheep with respect. Maybe it was time we learned to really welcome new sheep into the flock and not just introduce ourselves once and then ignore them. Maybe it was time to do a better job of looking out for each other so that we would never lose another sheep again. Let us pray. Jesus Christ, you are the true shepherd, and we are the sheep of your fold. Lead us and guide us through the valleys of our fears towards the paths of goodness, where all are welcomed and affirmed, and all are known by name. Call us back to you through storms and shadows, until we find ourselves safe at last in your arms, not like a stranger nor a guest, but like a child at home. Amen.